Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're all good. Hope you're all well. Welcome back to another live episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. And on today's show, we're going to be bringing you an update with regards to the fitness of Martin Ødegaard. I think it's fair to say that all of us lost our heads the other night when we saw videos and images going around of the injury that Martin Ødegaard had sustained playing for Norway in what a lot of us deem to be meaningless internationals. And we've been having this kind of debate back and forward over the last few days around who's to blame. Should Martin Ødegaard have even been playing in this game in the first place, given the kick he took against Brighton? There was rumours and suggestions that he was going to miss Norway's first game of the break, which was against Kazakhstan, but he came through that one unscathed, played all 90 minutes, etc., etc. So I think there's been a lot of discourse around this. I do think the fact that it's in an international break and we feel so helpless, it's not like we've sent our soldier out and he's been wounded playing for us or for our cause. It's for somebody else's cause. And I think as a fan, that makes it really kind of difficult to take and really difficult to get your head around. So, yeah, look, here we are. We were hoping that Martin Ødegaard was going to be okay for the weekend. It doesn't look like that's going to be the case. In fact, it doesn't look like he's going to be available for the next month. And I'll read you an update with regards to what some of the medical staff in and around the Norwegian camp have been saying about this in just a moment. But I mean, it's kind of good news in one sense because it could have been a lot worse if, of course, what we're about to read and discuss is accurate. We know that the club are carrying out their own assessments at the moment. Martin Ødegaard was pictured yesterday flying back and joining up at London Colney at the Sober Realty Training Centre to have his situation looked at. So let me give you exactly what the update is. Let me tell you what's been said, and then we can kind of discuss it. We can break it down and we can get into it. And if you've got any thoughts on it, get involved in the live chat, and I'll come to the live chat very, very shortly. So this is what has been said by one of the medical staff in the Norwegian setup. It's the national team doctor, Ola Sand. He was speaking to the Norwegian outlet VG. This is what he said. Such ankle injuries often take a minimum of 3 weeks. Anything sooner than that is just a bonus, and it could take longer. So this means that, of course, Martin Ødegaard will miss the North London derby against Tottenham on Sunday. Next week's UEFA Champions League opener is also off the table, and he may also miss Arsenal's big game against Manchester City on September 22nd. I think it's fair to say that he is going to miss that. I think that we're going to be without Martin Ødegaard, by my estimations, for about a month, and we're going to have to live with that. We're going to have to cope with that. Both Stala, the national team coach, and I know that the national team gathering is hanging by a thread. Basically, he's not going to be likely to join up with Norway in the next international break, which isn't that far away, annoyingly. He says he's not completely ruled out, but we have to wait and see both what the MRI images show and how quickly he responds to the treatment. Ankle injuries are very painful right away. For Martin, it was extremely painful. He was very concerned. They are now studying the MRI images and have sent them for further review. There's no suspicion of the fracture. This is the kind of good news part, if there is a good news part to this. He says if there was a fracture, we'd be talking about him being out for 6 weeks or more. This, of course, aligns with the examinations conducted by Norway's medical team. Ødegaard was clinically examined and given an ultrasound immediately after the game. And what we've received from the MRI scan in London so far, says Ola Sand, is that it's probably not a fracture in the ankle. So fingers crossed it isn't a fracture. Fingers crossed it is just a bad sprain. And as I say, a month, I mean, it's not great and it's not ideal, particularly when you factor in the games we've got coming up. But look, the games that we've got coming up in the immediate kind of future, Tottenham away at the weekend, he's out of that, no doubt about it. Man City the following week away, he's out of that, no doubt about that, in my mind anyway. Atalanta, you know, it's not the end of the world if we don't go to Bergamo and win, because obviously the new league phase of the Champions League does mean that there's a bit of margin for error. So that's a positive, I guess, if you're trying to, you're trying to fluff up the fact that we might not have what it takes to go out there and win. Remember, they're the Europa League winners, right? So they're no mugs. It's not going to be an easy game. And, you know, what I'm trying to say, I guess, is that if we did go there and draw, for example, it wouldn't be the end of the world and there'd be no need to panic. So to not have Martin Ødegaard for that game is obviously not as big a deal, I don't think, as having him missing from the North London derby and from that Manchester City game. But after that, the fixtures turn a little bit for us. And so on that basis, I think post those two games, we'll probably be all right. We'll probably find a way around it. I think the problem we've got is that Martin Ødegaard in his skill set and with regards to what he brings to this Arsenal team is so unique. Like, there isn't anybody else in this Arsenal side that can do exactly what he does. And what that means is that as a manager, you then have to tweak the system. You have to adjust things. And in adjusting things, are you messing around with too much? I guess would be the kind of fear and concern that maybe Mikel Arteta would have. We know that he likes to play the same team. We know that he likes to play in a certain way. And we know that Martin Ødegaard is so important to that way of playing that him being absent is, of course, going to be a blow and is, of course, going to be a miss. But I just think these things happen in football, right? And it could have been a lot worse. It could have been an injury that rules him out for, as we say, 6 weeks or more. It's not that. Hopefully he'll be back within a month. There was talk of around about 3 weeks in that interview given by the Norwegian team doctor. But for me, it looks like a good month. It looks like we're going to be without our captain for a good month. I'd love to get you guys' thoughts on this, so get them into the live chat. And I am going to talk Ben White very shortly as well. Let's pop over to the live chat and see what everybody is saying. I'm not at home today, so I don't have the two screens. So I'm trying to follow the live chat and doing the show at the same time. So you'll have to bear with me a little bit. What I will say, though, is if you haven't done so already, please do, guys, leave a like on the video. There's nowhere near enough likes on the board considering how many of you are watching. So please help me out with that. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you're new as well. Let me pop into the chat. Stefan says, we were lucky last season to not have too many injuries. Doesn't look like a repeat this season, and we will pay heavily for it. Look, I think you always need a bit of luck when it comes to injuries. It don't matter how good you are. And we were talking with Elliot Smith yesterday on the podcast of course, the Arsenal Vision. And he made the point and he said, find me a team that you think is good. Now take out their first choice midfield and see if they're still good. And he makes a really valid point, because we're not just without Martin Ødegaard now. Going into Sunday's game, we're without Declan Rice. We're without Mikel Merino. I think a lot of people feel, and I'm not totally sure about this, by the way, but a lot of people feel that Merino, Rice and Odegaard is going to be the midfield of the next year or so, the first choice midfield. I'm not so sure that Mikel Arteta is ready to give up on Thomas Partey and move him out of the team. I think he really values what he brings to the table. But I guess you can frame it that way. You can say that when you go out and spend what we spent to bring Mikel Merino in, obviously Martin Ødegaard's your captain and Declan Rice is your £100 million man, you could make the case in the argument that that is Arsenal's first choice midfield, and Mikel Arteta is going to have to navigate through this period as effectively as possible without those players. That's just the reality of the situation. But of course, post Spurs, we do get Declan Rice back, and it's a much fitter Declan Rice based on what I've seen over the course of this international break when representing England, which is a good thing. Merino's still going to be out for a while. I'd imagine he's probably going to come back around about the same time as Martin Ødegaard now. But those guys are going to have to get up to speed, especially Merino, who hasn't had that full preseason, who didn't start the season being fit and well. Fingers crossed Martin Ødegaard can recover quicker. You know, maybe he responds to the treatment. Maybe it's not as bad as first feared. But to put a timeline of 3 weeks to a month on it, I think is probably the right thing to do at this moment in time based on the information we have. Now, let's be clear, we're hearing this via the Norwegian national team's doctor. We haven't heard anything from Arsenal on this. Arsenal are still investigating this injury and this problem. Am I confident that they will tell us exactly how long they expect Martin Ødegaard to be out for? Probably not. But I do think that we have a history in recent years under Mikel Arteta and under this current regime, if you like, of bringing players back maybe a little bit earlier than the first feared timelines. I think generally that's been something we've been able to do. There are cases where injuries have gone on and on and on. Thomas Partey last season, for example, Tomiyasu, for example, some of the Zinchenko ones that we've experienced in recent times. So it's not a given that he's going to be back before the month, but I think there's a good chance that he could be, because it's Martin Ødegaard, and he's so important that I'm sure the club will be working night and day to get him as fit as possible, as soon as possible. Let's take some of your comments from the live chat. Alexis says, well done, Arteta and Edu, for getting a replacement. Sack them. I mean, guys, like, who is a replacement for Martin Ødegaard in world football? Like, unless you go and get Kevin De Bruyne, is there another player in the world that can do what Martin Ødegaard can do? It doesn't matter how much money you spend, how many transfers you make, you will always have players in your side. If you want to be at the very top level and you want to have the best talent, there'll always be players within your ranks that you will deem to be irreplaceable. And Martin Ødegaard is one of them. We discussed yesterday on the pod with Elliot whether or not we should have let Fabio Vieira go. And if people want to say that Arsenal were wrong to do that and want to be critical of that decision, given that we didn't receive any money for him, he has gone out on loan, etc., then I accept that. And I think that is a valid criticism to level at the football club. But this idea that we should be sacking Edu and sacking Arteta because of this is just madness. And it's the type of knee-jerk reaction that, unfortunately, we see everywhere at the moment. Jasper says, are we allowed to block Odegaard from going on the next international break? I got to be honest, mate. I think it's touch and go whether he's even going to be able to go. But I think given what's happened, given that, from what I understand, and I kind of touched on this on X the other day, given that Arsenal have seemingly expressed their concerns about Martin Ødegaard's fitness prior to him even playing against Kazakhstan, a game that thankfully he came through without any issues, I think there is going to be a lot of frustration on Arsenal's side of things here. And if there's any doubt about whether Martin Ødegaard's recovered or not, I don't think he goes to the next international break. I think Arsenal will dig their heels in now because, as I say, from my understanding, they did mention that they were worried about Martin Ødegaard post the Brighton game. They did make that point. They did ask the Norwegian team to take particular care of him and to make sure that they were assessing him on a day-to-day basis. He then picked up another injury in training, somehow made the first game, but in the second game has suffered this horrible injury. And so, yeah, I think there is a lot of frustration. And I think if you listen to the manager's comments after that Norway-Austria game, where he said, Mikel Arteta's not going to be happy with me, I think he was kind of joking, but he was half telling the truth as well, because he knows that Arsenal were concerned about Odegaard's fitness. He knows that there was a risk in playing Martin Ødegaard because, in sort of the terms that some people kind of like to put it, he was in the red zone. He was on the cusp of picking up an injury because he wasn't at 100%. So there is a big frustration on Arsenal's side of things. And so I think that relationship now is going to be a little bit strained between them and Arsenal going forward. But hey, we got to look out for ourselves. That's how it goes. Keith Bird says, I said on this channel, as well as others, that the most important position to have backup for was Martin Ødegaard, and I feel guilty now. No, we can't be doing that, mate. It's not anybody's fault. These things just happen, don't they? Lots of you really downbeat in the chat about our chances of winning the North London derby now with him, of course, missing. I mean, I don't really see it like that, if I'm being honest. I still think we've got a great chance of going and winning the derby. I still think we've got a good enough team to go on and win that game. And so, yeah, I'm feeling quite good about it. Some of you saying in the live chat that the volume is a bit low. Is that right? I'll up it if it is. I'm using some different equipment because I am on the move today. So it might well be the case that the volume is a little bit lower than normal. But I'll try and fix that. Let me know if that's better now, having made that slight adjustment. Okay, just going to give you a quick message from our good friends over at NordVPN. We've been talking about protection of some of our players when it comes to international duty and all the rest of it. Well, why not get yourself protected online with NordVPN? It's the best VPN service out there. I can say that from experience because I've used it for a number of years now. Lots and lots of incredible features. The best is probably the fact that you can change your location with the click of a button. We talk about protection, and the protection that you get online is brilliant, and it's so, so important, particularly for someone like me who essentially lives on their laptop and runs their entire business via it. But when it comes to that ability to change geolocation, I can tell you that is really, really special. I get to watch my Greek football by logging in as if I'm in Greece, which means that the geo blocks that are on that content are lifted, and I can get around them and access what I want to access. I can watch films that are out in the States. I can stream content from all different parts of the world. If I want to access match of the day when I'm on my travels, I can do that too, as well as being able to access subscription services in other countries that are much, much cheaper than what you get here in the UK. So NordVPN is brilliant. I'm telling you to go and try it. I'm sure you'll love it. I'm sure you'll find it very, very helpful, useful, beneficial, whatever you want to say. And there is a special discount available to the Chronicles of Aguna podcast listeners. You get a mega discount plus 4 months extra at the end of your plan. All you need to do is visit nordvpn.com/Chronicles AFC and sign up. That's nordvpn.com/Chronicles AFC. The link is in the description below. Do check it out. Okay, let's go back into the live chat. Keith has also said that the double pivot of Jorginho and Partey should see us be fine, and I agree with that. Sniper Scope, I beg your pardon, says Eze as the Odegaard replacement. See, this is the problem, okay? And this is the problem with trying to find these replacements. And it's the same issue that we've had with Bukayo Saka. It's the same issue that Spurs had for years with Harry Kane, right? You are talking about going out and signing a player who will probably want to move on at some point in the near future to go on to bigger and better things. But you're talking about bringing them here as a second fiddle, because whenever Martin Ødegaard is fit and available, he is going to play. He's the Arsenal captain. There's no doubt in my mind that Martin Ødegaard will play every single time he's available. So you can go and bring in an Eberechi Eze and you can say he's going to be the Martin Ødegaard backup, but he's never going to be satisfied with that. And so you're in this weird place where you need to find competent replacements, competent deputies, competent cover. But if they've got real ambition and they're looking to kick on their careers, are they going to come to be that for a player who's going to be in the side every single time he's fit, every single time he's available? The answer is probably no. So you've got to be realistic about who you can get as the deputy, who you can bring in as the cover. Lots and lots of chat at the moment about Ethan Nwaneri coming in. I think it's too much to ask of him. I think we'd be putting him in a really difficult position. I think we'd be asking way too much of him. And I don't want us to put this young lad into a position that he's not ready for and see him fail. I think we've got a responsibility as a football club when nurturing young talent, when bringing them through, to bring them through at the right rate, to do it sensibly, to do it in the most effective way possible. And Ethan Nwaneri is a huge talent. There's no doubt about that in my mind, but he needs some first-team football, basically, before you can say he's the guy that comes in to replace Martin Ødegaard in a situation like this. Alexis in the chat is very, very annoyed. Why are you writing in capitals, mate? Like, are you trying to shout on YouTube? Is that what you're doing? He says, so what you're saying is there is no one out there as Odegaard's replacement. The excuses. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's not as simple as go and get Eberechi Eze just in case Martin Ødegaard gets injured one day. Think about what he'd cost. Think about whether he'd be happy playing that role. Think about the whole picture. Stop just going, why not get this guy? Why not get that guy? Oh, there is a replacement. There is a replacement. There is a replacement. I can't stand when people only highlight problems but never, ever offer up a solution. You tell me who we should have brought in this summer to be that guy. Let me know. I'm open to hearing your opinion. In fact, I would value your opinion. But I can bet you're not going to come up with one, because that tends to be the case with those YouTube shouters. Oh my God, I can't believe I've said YouTube shouters. But why are you typing in caps, mate? Like, are you 5? Anyway, let's get back to today's stories, because I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about Ben White, who, of course, according to Lee Carsley, has asked not to be contacted when it comes to England duty moving forward. Guys, if you, before I go into that, because I find it quite funny, please do leave a like on the video. As I say, we need at least 500 likes on this video in total. We're nowhere near that yet. We're not even at 100, which when you think about how many of you are watching, is just not acceptable. So hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us on audio, please, of course, do leave us a review as well. Remember, yesterday's episode with Elliot Smith from the Arsenal Vision podcast is out and available. It's the last one on the feed. And if you're a patron, you'll be able to access it ad-free. So go back and check that out on the Patreon page. There is another Patreon episode for those of you that are already signed up or would like to, via the link in the description, dropping this evening. So lots of content to come. Make sure you're across that. Let's talk Ben White then. Lee Carsley was asked yesterday if he had spoken to Ben White, if he intends to, if he plans to speak to Ben White about his England future. And Ben White said, or Lee Carsley, I should say, said that Ben White had asked not to be contacted. And when I heard that, I just cracked up. And I'll tell you why. Because for a long time now, the whole world seems to care so much about Ben White and his decision not to represent England and not to play for England, to the point where we now care more than Ben White does. Ben White does not give a shit. And you know how you know that Ben White doesn't give a shit? Because he hasn't come out and said a word about this publicly. Somebody said to me when this whole story first kind of came to the fore that it's Ben White attention seeking and it's Ben White trying to like make himself out to be someone special, someone that's almost above playing for England. And my response was, if that was the case, if Ben White was doing this for PR purposes, if Ben White was doing this to try and show himself in a kind of different light or being a bit of a prima donna, we would have heard from him, and we haven't. He stayed incredibly quiet. He's on the side told the England set up that he's not interested. Don't contact him. He's got no interest in playing for the nation at the moment. And that wasn't always the case, because he was in an England squad and he was supposedly or reportedly involved in a falling out with Steve Holland. Whatever happened that day between Ben White and Steve Holland, or whatever happened over that period of time, it's obviously something that Ben White doesn't feel he can move past. And it's obviously something that he feels really, really strongly about. So rather than sort of sitting there every time England play going, why isn't Ben White willing to be called up? Why isn't Ben White in the picture? How about we just respect the guy's decision? He does not care about playing for England. And for us, as Arsenal supporters, that's the perfect scenario, because we don't have to worry about Ben White every time there's an international break, the way we've had to worry about so many other different players over the course of this international break. So, yeah, Alexis Sanchez has come up with apparently some replacements for Martin Ødegaard, players that, in his opinion, we should have signed to replace him. Let's have a look at these names that he's come up with then. So he's come up with Morgan Gibbs-White. Do you think Morgan Gibbs-White is good enough to play for the Arsenal? Personally, I don't. That's my opinion on him. And João Gomez, the guy that's joined PSG, is it around about 70 million euros? First of all, the price is ridiculous. And second of all, João Gomez does not play in the same position that Martin Ødegaard does. In fact, nowhere near it. Ticking Time Bomb in the chat sums this up. He thinks it's a career mode on FIFA. That's what it feels like, because those two names make absolutely no sense, in my opinion. If you come up with names that make sense, honestly, I will hold my hands up and I'll say, fair enough, good shout. But come on, João Neves, never going to work, was never on the cards, doesn't even play the same type of role that Martin Ødegaard does. So how he would be a like-for-like replacement, I don't know. And Morgan Gibbs-White. Are we not the Arsenal Football Club that are supposed to be challenging for the Premier League this season? Are we not the Arsenal Football Club that want to win the UEFA Champions League? Is that not where we're at today? Because all I hear from the naysayers is we have to win something, we have to win something, we have to win something. And you want to fill our squad with the likes of Morgan Gibbs-White. You think that is going to be the difference? I'd rather play Kai Havertz in attacking midfield than Morgan Gibbs-White. I'd rather give Ethan Nwaneri a chance. There you go. I've said it. Anyway, I've said my piece on Martin Ødegaard. I've said my piece on Ben White as well, who is just... He's just got the whole British media on strings at the moment with this whole thing. It does make me laugh. It does make me laugh. So, yeah, we'll leave it there. Rowan makes... See, this is a good suggestion for a player that we could potentially get in. Xavi Simons. And the reason Xavi Simons is a good suggestion is because he's not someone that, if he did come in, would be restricted to only playing in Martin Ødegaard's role when he's unavailable. He's someone that's good enough to compete for multiple positions in this team, which would make him a worthwhile addition to the squad. João Neves coming in to sit at the base of our midfield doesn't help us with the Martin Ødegaard issue. Morgan Gibbs-White is not a good enough player, in my opinion, to move the needle for Arsenal. And so those two don't make sense. This one from Rowan, Xavi Simons, I think is a really, really good suggestion. He would cost a fair bit of money, but because of his versatility and ability to play in a variety of roles, that would be an investment that I think you'd consider making. Anyway, leave your thoughts on the Odegaard news, on the Ben White stuff in the comments section below. I have got a Patreon podcast coming out this evening, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And of course, we'll be beginning our build up to the North London derby tomorrow, where we'll be doing a tactical preview of the game. We'll be trying to figure out what the right lineup and team is to go with. I'll explain my thoughts and reasoning behind that. And you, of course, can tear it apart in the comments, should you so wish. Thank you all once again for tuning in. Remember, leave the like on the video, or likes on the video. It really does help. Subscribe, all the rest of it. I'll see you all on the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves and have a great day. Goodbye.